Yeah.
According to the commissioner who appointed or whatever.
Yeah.
We good, Ryan? Good to
You
go?
are good to go, yes.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, June 9th, 2022 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll begin with the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Additions, deletions to the agenda? None? We have two sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first set is the minutes from April 14th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then we have the April 28th, 2022 minutes for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, all right.
At the top of page 6, at the distillery, it talks about associated rental units.
Oh.
I don't remember any,
Oh, definitely should not say that. Oh, we can,
I don't remember any
we
rental.
should say residential, not rental.
Okay.
We can fix that if you want to include that in the motion to change that to residential.
Okay.
Moved.
All right, we'll do that, and with the change, and do we have to do a
I think
no,
we'll just,
all in favor with the change? Aye. Oppose? Good, we have two agenda items tonight. One is a item on consent, and so is there anyone that would like to discuss this, or?
Pull it off, there's a motion to pull it from consent.
Yeah,
I have a question.
I have a comment.
then we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. All right, I'll read it into the minutes. This is a Bright non-commercial kennel, and it's a request for an administrative permit use approval for a non-commercial kennel to keep up to 9 cats and 2 dogs. Willard M. Bright Jr. and Paula R. Bright are the owners. It's located at 4255 4th Place. The zoning is RS6, residential single family, up to 6 units per acre. The land use designation is L2, low density residential, 1, up to 6 units per acre. And I'm assuming that there's no presentation from,
no, sir.
so we'll open it for discussion. Mark, you had a,
Yeah, I had a couple, actually. It talked about, in great detail, about the number of cats and dogs and the size and the noisiness or lack thereof of the animals. And along those lines, I was just curious as to whether if there were any changes in those 9 animals, if one of them passed away or for some other reason, it was replaced. I guess the replacement would be allowed, and just wondered if there's considerations from what we're doing here today as to, size and shape and.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Beecher, no, technically, no. I think the reason for describing the number and the size was just to give you an idea of what is, what's currently going on today. The approval, it does not include a recommendation for a limitation. And basically anything over 5 animals is considered to be a non-commercial kennel. We've only had a few of these. There's probably more out there than we know about, but it's usually complaint driven. But to answer your question in short, it is not limited to specifically 9 and 2. We're trying to give an idea of what is currently there. But if for some reason the numbers were to go considerably higher, we would probably revisit it, either through code enforcement or through a revised approval.
So are we approving 9 and 2, or
You're approving,
something
you're
in the
approving,
neighborhood of
Correct.
9 and 2?
yeah, that's a fair way to characterize it, is in the neighborhood of 9 and 2.
So what would be the trigger point? 15 total, or do we know?
Another complaint, that would be, you know, considerably different. One up, one down, we're not gonna police it that regularly, but yeah, if the population doubles, so to speak, then we would certainly revisit it.
Okay, so we're approving them as a non-commercial kennel.
Correct.
However we define that. And the other thing is, all animals will be kept inside except for outdoor exercise.
Right.
Would that, if they're kept in a penned area, they could conceivably be outside all the time?
No. So the cats are primarily indoors all the times in an air-conditioned garage. The dogs are the ones that are walked or allowed to go in the backyard, but that's really no different than letting your dogs out for a walk or to play in the backyard.
Well, walking and having them in a fenced area are two different things. In a fenced area, they'd be outside.
Right,
They wouldn't necessarily be inside animals, inside pets.
Right. The cats, yes, the cats
Well, but they have a cat door to somewhere.
to the inside of the house, between the house
Oh,
and the
between the garage and the house?
garage. Correct.
Okay, I must have missed that. Well, I'm just wondering what keeps the dogs from being in the fenced backyard?
I mean, to be completely honest, the two dogs by themselves, absent the cats, would be no different than having two dogs. So, but yeah, I mean, they're small dogs. They don't stay all day long.
Right, but they could trade them for big dogs. I'm not necessarily against this, I'm just trying to understand.
It wouldn't make any difference as far as the dogs. They have 9 cats, that's what triggers the need for the non-commercial kennel. If their neighbors would have 2 dogs, there'd be no need for anything except for a pet license from the county, and they could stay outside all day long if they wanted to. If they were noisy and disturbed the neighbors, that's something different. But as far as the number of dogs, we're good here.
I understand, but I think we're approving the fact that they're inside all the time except for exercise.
And again, that
Yes.
would be policed through code enforcement if it
Okay.
became unreasonable.
Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, I just had a comment. It's actually on one of the points Mark raised. As I understand, we're approving generically 9 cats, 2 dogs.
Correct.
Not particularly these dogs and cats. And that's why I thought the staff memo really shouldn't have paid all that much attention to what they have today. Because, you know, that 15-pound dog tomorrow could become a 150-pound
Sure.
Rottweiler or something.
All right, we can be less specific. I think there's a difference between having 40 dogs or 40 cats and the 9 cats and 2 small dogs that we wanted to.
Oh, yeah, I agree with all that, but it's almost like a rezoning. When we rezone, we have to look at the most intense use.
Sure.
And in this case, from my standpoint, you have to look at, well, if we're approving 2 dogs along with 9 cats, I really shouldn't necessarily focus on a 15-pound little dog,
Understood.
because it could be, the most intense use could be a big old barker. But I agree, I mean, 2 dogs is everybody can have 2 dogs anyway, so that's not a big deal, but that was just a comment.
Okay.
Well, the county limit is 5 per family.
Right.
So-
Yes, the formula gets kind of really weird if you look at that last criterion. It's 5, but if you have 4 and 2 are outside, and it gets a little. But once you hit the 5 mark, it becomes a non-commercial kennel, regardless.
Yeah, and this is just making what they are doing legal.
Correct.
And I will bet you that there are a ton
sure
of
there's
families
countless
in this
numbers of other homes
county
that-
that have more than 10 dogs or more than 10 animals. I definitely admire them for doing this, for coming forward and doing this.
Yeah, like I said, I've only done maybe 2 or 3 in the.
I remember one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This came out of code enforcement,
Yeah.
which is,
And so the owners were
had to stop and
forced to come to us and take this route. And anybody else that has more than the 5 or whatever the guidelines are, they would have to apply as well, whether code enforcement, it could be administrative without code enforcement
Yeah,
under this ordinance, or?
correct. Yeah, you could do it the right way and get the approval in place before you have that. video. But
And so moving forward, it's, I think you've said it twice, from here on out, it's going to be complaint-driven, dealing with this.
yes.
And I'm assuming that after a certain number of complaints, there are fines that are,
Yeah, or we'll revisit the
yeah,
approval.
yeah. Anyone else? Call for motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Our second agenda item is a public hearing, and it is the consideration of land development regulation amendments to section 971.41, modifying the criteria for accessory dwelling units. And this is a public hearing. Any ex parte?
It's legislative.
Can't imagine, yeah, legislative, yep. And swear-in participants, yep.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Staff presentation?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that most of you have, well, you probably do know Brian, but in a formal capacity, this is the MPO Staff Director, Brian Freeman, and he'll present the item.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Freeman. I'm with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm also community development staff. This is a little bit of a homecoming feeling for me because I remember doing many Planning and Zoning Commission meetings in the old building across the street. I don't know if you all remember the commission chambers in that building with all the bright orange chairs and everything. So this is definitely more comfortable sitting here tonight. The MPO initiated a visioning study last year that was primarily focused on the rural lands of the county, but also there were some other issues that kind of pertain to the whole county that came up through that visioning study. You may remember the presentation that was provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission back at one of the February meetings. And this item that you have before you tonight is actually something that kind of came up through that visioning process. And just kind of want to go over this tonight, and then you'll probably see some other visioning-related items in the future as well. And I think the first thing that would be good to do is look at what is the definition of, as it's called in the code, an accessory single-family dwelling unit. And instead of just reading out that definition that's in Chapter 901, I kind of want to just highlight the 3 key points of it. And I think the first one is that an accessory unit is an independent dwelling unit that is also on a lot that has a single-family residence. And then the second point is it can be an attached or a detached structure. So it can be part of the same structure as a house, or it could be a detached structure, whether it's part of a garage or just a separate structure altogether. And then the third point is that we have standards for these in Chapter 971, actually Section 41, subsection 10, that kind of lays out all the different criteria that these have to meet with. And it's in that part of the code that these proposed changes are. And I'll just kind of go over the highlights of those. The current code allows accessory dwelling units to be up to 1/3 of the air-conditioned floor space of the house, or 750 square feet, whichever is less between those two. And so what's being proposed is it's a modest boost in that allowance, up to 50% of the size of the residence, or 1,000 square feet. And then for lots that are actually over 1 acre in size, that's actually a little bit higher. It's still 50% of the residence, but up to 1,200 square feet as a maximum. So that would be just on lots that are over 1 acre in size. Also, for lots that are properties that are 200,000 square feet or larger, so this is primarily agriculturally zoned lots, but any residential parcel that's meets that 200,000 square foot requirement would also be affected by this, would be allowed a second accessory dwelling unit. This actually kind of followed up on the discussion that we had at the Planning and Zoning Commission back in February. There would be a size limitation of 600 square feet for that second accessory dwelling unit in those cases. And then one other thing for the lots that are 200,000 square feet or larger, there is in the code a 75-foot maximum separation requirement for the accessory dwelling unit from the principal residence. So basically, we don't want them to be too far apart. We still want them to be fairly close on the property. But on larger properties, so again, this is really 5-acre properties and larger, that is increased from 75 feet to 150 feet. On a 5-acre parcel, I don't think that's really going to be a significant change, but would allow for a little bit more flexibility in how that's laid out. There are a few prohibitions for accessory dwelling units that are being added to the code with this revision. I'll just kind of highlight those real quickly. The first is that there can be no operation of the accessory dwelling unit as a vacation rental. The second one is that no commercial use or home occupation permit would be allowed for the accessory dwelling unit. And then the third one is that no mobile homes or RVs could be used for the accessory dwelling unit. And so, as I mentioned, we've had a visioning study that's been underway. We've had quite a large number of public meetings and workshops on this. As you can see, as some of the different meetings we had, including, I think it was 7 different workshops over the last 3 weeks. And this is something that's been actually brought up at most of these meetings, at least all of them going back to the month of February. And I'd have to say that all the feedback that we've received from the community so far has been positive for this. Not really any kind of negative feedback that's come on this particular item. And one other thing I want to highlight is that while the study is not complete, we're expecting a final report on the visioning study by the end of the summer. There's been a lot of feedback that we have received from the public, and there's been a lot of, I think, consensus around some guiding principles that I think are going to come out of the visioning study, and something that we're going to use these in looking at any kind of code change or plan or policy changes in the future, that relate to the visioning study. And so what we're doing is we're calling this the VIP treatment. And so that's, in this case, VIP stands for Visioning Implementation Principles. And these are things that there's been a lot of support from in the community. And you can see them shown on the screen there. Conservation of sensitive environmental lands, need for a diversity of housing types, including affordable options, infrastructure improvements that provide mobility and multimodal transportation options, promoting a healthy economy, supporting local economic development, maintaining agriculture, and maintaining rural character. Those are those 6 guiding principles. And so in looking at these, I think you can make the case that I would say actually that this proposal probably meets all 6 of them, but I think as we looked at how this specific proposal meets those guiding principles, I think it very strongly hits the need that was identified on affordable housing and a variety of housing types available, but also strongly, I think, supports the other principles as well. And so this is something that you'll see in the future. I think with other things, we're still kind of refining it, and I think we want to keep that in line with the final report and recommendations that come out of the visioning study. And so at this time, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that the proposed changes be adopted to Chapter 971 for accessory dwelling units, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Day, this is a public hearing, by the way. I don't know, did you open it?
Not yet, but we
Okay.
don't.
That's fine. We can do it after. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
just wanted to
we'll open it after the commissioner's question, yep.
Okay, so let me just say, as I have been actively involved with the senior issues in Indian River County, and clearly housing for seniors has been in the forefront. So I really am very pleased to see this in front of us. Having said that, I'm hoping that this is not the only change that we will see. Not that I have anything specific, but I'm a little curious about how this one bubbled to the top and came to us first.
I would say that it was almost like maybe a triage or a tiering of some of the different proposals. And I think the ones that are maybe the simplest or the easiest to implement are the ones that you're seeing first. And so I think this one very much so fits that.
And
you
there are
know.
more on the horizon?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. The second one is more technical. My question is, and it may be for Mr. DeBraw, it has to do with the vacation rental component. I'm aware that there's been a struggle between the state and the counties in terms of vacation rental units. And I'm also aware that the county did a great job in creating an ordinance to address that issue that also complies with whatever Tallahassee is thinking at this moment. But I have two parts to this question. One is, how will it be enforced? And two, in the event that the folks in Tallahassee make more changes, will that impact this?
To answer your first question, it would be enforced just like a regular vacation rental ordinance through code enforcement. We've already had complaints where there has been an existing accessory dwelling that has been used for a vacation rental, and the neighbors usually like to complain about something like that. So is it going to be 100% effective? No, it's not. But is it effective enforcement and control? Yes, I think it is. Your second question is more challenging. The legislature seems to like to take away our home rule power if they can. Our home rule power is the power to pass ordinances that would differ than the state legislature. Good example would be vacation rental, where ours is more stringent than the state's. Could they do away with that with a majority vote and a stroke of a pen from the governor? Yes, they could.
And so then that would just not be an element of this.
That's correct. Then the provision that they couldn't use it for a vacation rental would be eliminated.
Okay.
So they'd be able to use it as a vacation rental.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, go ahead.
Let me preface this by saying I appreciate the affordable housing thing, and I am your representative to the Affordable Housing Committee. On the other hand, I'm a little confused as to the definition of single-family residential, because I thought I saw in here, but I didn't highlight it, these accessory dwelling units are allowed to be rented? Is that correct? That's kind of weird. How does that qualify under single-family?
Mr. Chair,
And what's the effect, maybe this is to you, what's the effect on the homestead?
So a normal home, a regular single-family home can also be rented, and in that case, it would not be homesteaded. So in this case, the accessory dwelling unit could also be rented. Usually it's self-policing, because if you own the home, you're not gonna rent it to a troublemaker. Potentially, the primary home could be rented and the accessory, but you're also gonna have to, keep your tenants happy. So, that being said, yes, it's a separate livable rentable unit. More often than not in practice, we have quite a few of these. In fact, these used to have to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission up until 3 or 4 years ago. And it's now approved at the staff level, but we have a number of them, and they are more often than not for immediate family, extended family, or some other friend or relative. It's rare that people are just flat out renting to strangers in their backyard. Yeah. It has to be tied to a single family home on the same lot, under the same ownership. So for those reasons, it's, like I said, pretty much self-policing. But as far as homesteading goes, I don't think you can't homestead an accessory dwelling unit, and the principal unit, if it's being rented, does not have homestead protection.
If one is rented and one is not, then it seems to me you get into a question about a partial homestead.
Yeah, it would be similar, Phil Mattson, Community Development Director, and it might be similar to renting out a room in your house.
And is that permitted in a single-family
Yes, it is.
homesteaded?
Yep.
It would have to pass the 50% rule. If 50% or more of your house is rented out, then you cannot claim it as a homestead. If it's less than 50%, you can still claim it as homestead.
Well, I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, coming from the city planning and zoning for 19 years, were two things. You know, I asked an attorney, what part of single-family residential do you not understand? Because he was defending basically a rooming house on Date Palm. And the other thing is, what? I also mentioned that in the city, you can't have, like if you have a mother-in-law's suite or something like that, you can only have one kitchen in a single-family residential neighborhood. There was something else. Well, I'll let that one go for now. I highlighted two other things. You've got mobile and manufactured homes shall not be used as accessory dwelling units, but this ordinance applies to MH zoning. I was curious as to how that worked.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mutcher. Because single-family homes are a permitted use in the RMH zoning, so there are a few subdivisions out there that are zoned RMH 6 or RMH 8. They're platted lots of record. You can, of course, have a mobile home, but you can also have a conventional single-family home. And if you have a single-family home, then you could have a conventional accessory,
Another single family.
but not a mobile or trailer.
All right, I got that. And then there's another part right after that. It says, you're not permitted to obtain a home occupational permit. And I understand that completely. However, one of the city council people keep talking about the new state law that prohibits regulation of home businesses. And wouldn't this section regulate home businesses?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mutcher, I'll probably defer back to Bill, but I think you are allowed to have a home occ in the primary residence. To me, I think this is a special scenario, so the accessory dwelling would not be subject to those same rules. That's my best.
Good, correct.
I haven't read it, but it kind of sounds like you're just not allowed to regulate home businesses at all.
No, you're still allowed to regulate them to the state standards, not to local standards. So if you would have a Harley-Davidson repair shop in your garage that would generate too much traffic and too much noise, you would still be able to regulate it. But if you're an accountant that does everything over the phone, or a real estate agent, or, what have you, as long as you meet as long as you don't exceed the minimum standards, you're fine.
Understand that. So why would it be the accountant not be allowed in the accessory structure?
Because we're saying so right here in our ordinance.
Yeah, we don't want to have too many home occs going on. It's one thing to have multiple units, but then we have multiple people in businesses, and it's really a licensing thing. The regulatory side has been sort of freed up, but we still have licensing. We still have those requirements to still keep track of things.
Are you still licensing home occupations
Right.
in addition to the what they changed the name to, business license?
A business tax license, a home
Business
occupation.
tax.
Yep.
Yes.
And is there a second level of
So normally,
Occupation approval?
right, so, yes, so there's a zoning approval or a code enforcement approval to have a home occupation, and then you still have to get your business tax license through the tax collector. That's merely a tax transaction.
Right.
But they won't issue a business tax license, or what used to be called an occupational license, at a home unless you have the requisite home occupation. So that's a two-level, sort of two-tiered system. If you're in a commercial space, you just walk over and get your tax license.
Right. Okay, I guess that's it for me.
Alan?
Can somebody just give me a summary on what is the current status of our local law, state law, whatever, here in Indian River County with respect to vacation rentals? I remember that was a big issue a while back. I know the state legislature
I'll do my best, and then
came
I'll
in,
let-
but I don't know where it stands now.
I'll-
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So originally, from what I recall, it was a complete preemption with sort of no rules whatsoever. And then it bounced back. And in today's standards, generally speaking, again, it's more of a licensing and some bare minimums in terms of filing and licensing and good contact information for the owner-operator. Some minor safety requirements like fire extinguishers and smoke alarms. And then the biggest thing is parking, and that's still in place. Is I think it's 2 spaces, no more than 2 spaces per room, but not to exceed 4 or something. And but you can park in the garage. So there's a couple caveats, but those are sort of the main rules: is some contact information and licensing, some minor safety requirements, and then parking.
Also occupancy, so it's a
Oh, sure.
maximum
And-
number of people.
Yeah, max occupancy, no more than 2 per bedroom, with a max at like 8 or something like that.
Right.
And yeah, annual inspection with the license renewal.
Paying the annual fee, annual inspection. So,
Prior to the adoption of this ordinance, assuming it gets adopted, are accessory dwelling units currently prohibited from being used as vacation rentals?
yes.
They are.
Yes.
What was the rationale behind that, out of curiosity?
Because to permit the accessory dwelling, they have to sign a recorded document that says they won't use it for vacation rental purposes.
And I think on their application, it says a primary.
It's also-
I mean, doesn't it distinguish on it? I'm sorry. I'm vicariously referencing Rebecca Guerra. She is one of our newer hires. She is our code enforcement chief. She's also got a plethora of experience in other states as well as Florida. She's from Florida, worked most recently in St. Lucie County. So, yes, it is part of the application process. It just doesn't seem like a good idea to allow somebody to operate a hotel in their backyard. I guess that's the best thing I could say is,
Okay, so in this county, can I rent out a room on a kind of a vacation rental basis?
no. Slow down. Yes.
And I say this, I travel to all these golf tournaments, and I have to get lodging at all these places. And, maybe 20% I go through Airbnb and get a house. But by searching for those houses, I see all the options that are out there. I know, in fact, I remember something out in the state of Washington, I had leased what we would call an accessory dwelling. It was a little cottage right on the side of the property. And I see rooms all the time. I don't get those. But I was just curious how Indian River County's allowances on vacation rentals compared to what I'm seeing when I search for places in different states or countries.
Right, so sort of think of, again, sort of the self-policing, the principal structure or the principal home. If you don't have an accessory dwelling, you could rent it out as a vacation rental, the whole lot, the whole house, and that's the most common sort of Airbnb approach. You could potentially rent just a room in the home, but when you're renting a room in the home, again, if the owners are there, you're kind of self-policing. The thought here is to not allow someone to rent it out back and let them cause havoc with the neighbors while you're inside with your, doors locked and, shades drawn. So that was the point of limiting the accessory dwelling to not be a vacation rental. You can rent it on an annual or long-term basis, more than 30 days. That goes back to Mr. Muture's point, but we didn't want to have a point where someone builds an accessory dwelling specifically to rent it out for short-term purposes.
like anything we do in planning, like 9 cats, really doesn't become an issue until it gets hauled into code, it becomes questioned and so forth. Theoretically, could somebody say, it's not fair, it's violating a state law to not let you rent this? Who knows? Could be a test case for the courts. We don't think it's good policy to allow a second unit to be rented on an itinerant basis. We have no say over the rental of your primary unit by state law preemption. So that's just our take on it. I mean, we're open to discussion. I think it's a pretty good ordinance the way we've done it. In fact, I would almost say this is close to the perfect planning ordinance, and I say that for a couple of reasons. I really do. One, we do about 35 or 40 of these a year. It's with a multi-generational family, and with the baby boomers getting older, it's increasingly popular. It's increasingly a life-saving alternative. It's supported by the AHAC. It's one of the 14 recommendations of the AHAC for affordable housing. It's self-policing, as Ryan's mentioned probably 5-6 times here. That's really important. If something's going on in your property, you're responsible. You're going to be the one cited, not the guy renting it, unless it's an illegal activity, of course, and he'll get arrested. So you have a vested interest in keeping an eye on it versus an absentee owner. I mean, we have owners overseas that own properties here that rent them as accessory dwelling units, or try to. Edification rentals. So you've got an on-premises management system, you've got a multi-generational option, you've got an affordable option. I don't think renting it out, long-term leasing is the worst thing either. We hired a planner once right out of planning school. She started as an exchange student and immigrated and had a visa and from India, and really had very few resources, on her own. And like, hey, did you find an apartment? She goes, yeah, what apartment building? And it was an accessory dwelling unit. It's actually the first I saw of them in Indian River County. It worked great for her. It was a nice, small, self-contained unit behind someone's house. She had access to the pool without bothering the neighbor, and lived there for about a year. So, like I say, I think this is one of the rare win-wins in planning. We've taken a pretty good provision. We were early adopters of this. A lot of jurisdictions still don't have it. I read the planning literature, how to fight for accessory dwelling units, in some jurisdiction in California, whatever. And we made it better, because a lot of times we all do a turn. We thank our predecessors. Bob Keating and Stan and the guys who kind of invented this and rolled it out. Another innovation they have is we all have to do the front counter. It's called Planner of the Day duties. I've seen some of you come in, personally for stuff at Planner of the Day. And I've had to tell people, yeah, you could have one. Great for my mom. How big could it be? She's got a 1,100 square foot house, 350 square feet. So, it's almost inhumane, to put your mom in there after a lifetime of serving and so forth. So,
Mother-in-law's okay.
yeah, on the other hand. And then we made it better in one other way, and on very large lots, the question came up, and it's a good illustration of how can the P&Z be helpful in some of these things, and how could they innovate? Obviously, they're very helpful in their editorial and critical review of whatever we propose. How can they innovate? And I think it was Chip. I want to credit one of you. Maybe it was not, but who came up with what's wrong with having a second one on a very large lot. So we came up with the compromise of fine, so long as one is attached to the house. And who knows, someday on a very large lot, a 5-acre lot, that second home might be called a Chip Landers. Said, I want to put in a Chip Landers. So anyway, which is fine with me, so long as the actual Chip Landers is not living in my backyard. I'm all right with it.
Hey, good rent.
Hey, not bad.
It would be called an Outlanders.
Oh.
Yeah, to echo Phil's point, I was going to mention in the pod office, probably for every one that moves forward, there's 2 that says 750, or unfortunately, if it's a 1,500 square foot principal, 500 is just not going to cut it. So I think we were trying to strike a fine balance between not going too big and having a fairly large second unit in someone's backyard and losing the single family character that's important, but also making it a little bit more habitable for not just mother-in-law or the college student, but a young couple with one kid can live in 1,000 square feet for sure. So we're trying to tackle the affordable housing component. We're trying to, you can generate income if there's so many pros to this, and so far very few cons.
Anyone else?
Can I just clarify? The very first question I asked was, if we didn't pass this, our accessory
Dwelling
dwelling units, allowed to be used for vacation rentals today?
We don't issue vacation rental licenses for accessory dwelling units
Right.
currently.
You do
They
not?
have to license with us, and it's not on the application.
Okay. So the only thing I'm wondering about are there people out in this community who have accessory
That would
dwelling
be
units
losing?
who have been
No,
using them?
and I'll say that
now
with
they can't?
confidence, or a little confidence, because we subscribe to a service that reads all the vacation rentals out there, reconciles it to us that we have our licensing with, and kind of rats out for us those who are doing it illegally. So, do we enforce those that don't? Yeah, we usually try to make contact with them or visit them or whatever. Are they all correct? Often not, but we do get this service that does that for us. It reads Airbnb, VRBO, all of these, reads our list of approved site licensed properties, and tells us where it's inconsistent, so.
It also helps with the tourist tax.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
We don't want to miss
also-
out on that.
The state was good in that regard that they did.
And I assume, I mean, if your objective is we want to increase affordable housing in the community, then the concept of, to the extent we allow these additional accessory dwelling units to be created, we want them to be used for that purpose, essentially.
Right.
Rather than, vacation generating separate, separate issues.
Right, it's affordable housing, not affordable vacations. Apologies to, your personal situation.
But I will tell you, I mean, sitting on this board, and back when I was county attorney, that whole issue started coming up, and there was a lot of opposition in the county to it. And I kind of had a negative view of the things because of that. Then I started needing lodging literally around the world. And like I say, about 1 out of 5 times I got a house, and an Airbnb house. And I started to meet some of these people who were doing this, and it really was kind of interesting. They're just kind of basically regular working people who have an opportunity. When I went over to Portrush, Northern Ireland, a father owned a house. His daughter lived there. That was where she lived. But along came this giant golf tournament, and they said, "Hey, let's move out for a week. We can rent this place out literally for a couple $1,000s." And I didn't begrudge him. She was nice as could be. It's just been an interesting experience being on both sides of that issue, and seeing, in the end, seeing the people who use it as a supplemental form of income, and it was interesting to
Well,
me.
I can assure you, 6 weekends out of the year in Tallahassee, even college kids can make a little income and a very nasty living space, given if there's a home game or not. So it's not uncommon, and just like the thought of just moving into somebody's house without Airbnb and things like that didn't exist. The thought of hopping in a car for a Uber drive, wasn't really that common, but now it's much more common.
Mr. Chairman, I remembered the one other thing that I was going to ask about, and that has to do with looking at the list of the check marks and the affordable housing and all these changes. What's the purpose of these minor changes? I mean, again, coming from the city, we didn't have this at all, but, and I was surprised to learn about the existing ordinance. And what are these small changes to the existing ordinance? What drives them, and is it really going to make a big difference?
Yes, like you said, we do about 35 a year, 40 a year. We'd probably do 70 if it weren't for the size limitation. A lot of people, there's a fixed cost on putting electrical conduit, plumbing, tying into your septic if you're on a septic, whatever. There's a fixed cost to extending that out to your backyard, foundation pouring, architecture. It's just not worth it for a 350 square foot house. But it may be worth it for something where we've given this guy a 50% bump now. Now he's got a 700 square foot house. Somebody could live comfortably in it. We'll get more of them, I hope. Rebecca can, back me up on this. I can't recall a code enforcement complaint about accessory dwelling units. There's plenty on short-term vacation rentals. Usually those are, and while it is like kind of a gaining currency, and I've even stayed in one, It's usually when somebody has a party at the house. So we regulate how many people stay overnight. We don't regulate how many people visit during the day. So that tends to be where the short-term vacation rental, penumbra comes in. Back to your question, what does this do? Why are we doing it? To promote affordable housing, with that second one in an agricultural area to maintain the rural character. It's kind of surprising, but there are farming families that maintain farm equipment, whose kids grow up and want to live and take over the family business, but don't want to be in their bedroom with the poster of, Britney Spears on the floor, on the wall. So to me, I think it's a win-win. I think it's a pretty good thing to do. I like to question, why are we doing this piecemeal like this? We might have people pending who'd want to do them, and if just getting them out a month or two in advance of some of the other stuff that might take more consideration, don't hurt to do it. I don't think it takes any more time, to do them one at a time versus 30 in one night. So
It seems to me this might also increase septic tank usage. You mentioned that. Generally, the septic tanks are sized and inspected for the number of residents on the property, a number of bedrooms and bathrooms and things like that. And if we start, as you said, building more bedrooms and bathrooms and kitchens and laundry facilities and things like that, the health department's going to get involved and the costs are going to go up. And the potential, I don't believe myself that the septic tanks, other than the leaky ones on the, close to the river, are a major problem. But if they are, this will possibly contribute to that too.
or possibly not.
If I could, I think actually the opposite may also hold true. So if you have an existing home, 15, 20 years old with an existing 20-year-old septic system, when you add the accessory, you can do it one of two ways. You can build an entirely new system that's sized strictly for the accessory dwelling unit, and then you're not necessarily revisiting the original. But what you could also do is resize it to have a shared. And in that regard, you're probably looking at redoing the system entirely, which could actually help. We don't really see a whole lot of that. What we typically see is them being built together anew. So I just got off the phone with somebody that's moving here from up north, which is very common, but she wanted to do that exact thing. I'm moving down, but I'm also bringing my mother-in-law or my mom, and we want to build both. So also, if it's on sewer, the accessory dwelling also has to be on sewer. So if it's in an area where sewer is available, they have to connect. So by and large, I don't think it's going to drastically increase the amount of new septic that's going out there.
Yeah.
You mentioned an application process
Correct.
for this. Is a sign-off from the health department
Absolutely.
part of it?
Absolutely, yes. Health and utilities. They look at. I send every accessory dwelling unit to health and utilities every time, because sometimes it's water and sewer, sometimes it's water and septic, sometimes it's well and septic. But yes, they review and sign off every time.
Okay. Sounds like we might be getting close to being done. I have a question for the attorney. As you know, I live in a single-family neighborhood on Central Beach, and I can't imagine a lot of these things popping up, nor would I want them to. Am I allowed to vote no on this, just out of general principles? I know sometimes I'm a big property rights person, but I know sometimes we're not allowed to vote no.
This is a legislative matter. You can vote however you want to with it. But the other thing that it just going from your comment there, Mr. Moocher, is you have to remember there's a large tax savings that occurs if you have the granny flats. So if you go ahead and build an accessory structure and you have mom and dad come in and live in that accessory structure, or grandma and grandpa, or somebody else that's there, there's a large tax savings. And what I think Ryan is trying to impress upon the commission today is that, this is an already existing use that we have. It is very popular. We're trying to increase the popularity of it because the reasoning behind it is that we and the public want to have mom and dad or grandma and grandpa living in the backyard when they move down from New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Minnesota, what have you. It's a very desirable thing, and it is very sought after as far as the real estate market is concerned as well. So if you're looking at it from the standpoint of there's going to be a bunch of renters in my neighborhood, I think that's going to be the minority. What you're going to see is a lot of grandma and grandpas and those sort of folks living in the accessory structure.
Okay, I don't have as much a problem with that. I don't understand the tax savings you talked about.
As far as on your property,
important to
as far as your
educate me on that now.
your property taxes, if you make improvements to your property and those improvements, whether you add another bedroom, whether you add an accessory dwelling structure, and that structure is used for a family member that is, grandparent or mom and dad or something like that, you get a tax break on that improvement. Now, when it stops being used for the family member, the assessment goes back up to what it normally would be to have a house and an accessory structure on it. But you are not taxed at the same high rate as you would be if grandma and grandpa live in there.
Is that new?
I did the ordinance. I think Granny Flats was something, I wrote the ordinance for the county, and I think we did it in 10 years?
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, quite a while.
It's
Well,
what
all
we're,
those things are state controlled.
But the state allows us to choose whether we want to do it or not, and we chose to do it. The county commission chose to go that route.
and is what we're discussing tonight going to impact the Central Beach area?
No, our jurisdiction is the county, that is the city. So
Yeah.
you won't see any
So
more as a
you're-
consequence of this in your
You
neighborhood.
have no worries.
No, I don't personally, but
Yeah.
we talked about the short-term rentals. I still don't think the people on South Beach are happy.
We are preempted from
story.
County
doing anything other than what we do, which is regulate the number of people in the home and regulate the parking. And we enforce all nuisance complaints and all that against that, but that's a different issue entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Anyone else? Dare I ask?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to.
Wait, this is a public hearing. We need to open the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing and the public can speak, please, one at a time. Anyone want to speak? We will close the public hearing. All right.
No, I do have a couple of questions.
Oh, go ahead. But why'd they skip you?
Well, you're not under public hearing.
It's closed.
I know.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
What is the minimum size lot that this would be possible in?
So it has to be a conforming lot. So in the RS, in the RS6, it would, in theory, could be 7,000, but you can't fit it. And then the RS3 would be 12,000.
Has to meet all setbacks.
Yeah, it has to meet all the setbacks, building coverage, and it has to be a conforming lot. So in VLE, you're probably not going to see a lot of these, just because they're already filling up the lot. And not to pick on VLE, Highlands, you name it, early platted GDC lot, the principal home takes up primarily most of the building footprint. So normally we do see these on larger lots, or we'd probably really like to see more of them on the ag lots. But to answer your question, there is no minimum lot size over and above the standard zoning lot size, but you still have to be able to fit it and meet all of your other requirements, open space, setbacks, building coverage, all of those things.
Okay, because I could see somebody doing a two-story with a mother-in-law suite, or if
Yeah.
it fits.
Sure.
Because the lack of housing in general for the county, the lack of affordable housing, which is even worse, and whether it's the mom, dad, mother-in-law, whatever it may be, or the kids moving back.
The kids
The
moving back.
HOA trumps us in all cases. If you're
Yeah,
in an
understood.
HOA that doesn't allow certain architectural standards, setbacks, whatever, they
No.
trump us.
Yeah. But, I mean, most of the HOAs are gonna make it, it's extremely difficult for
Yeah,
a lot of
I think so.
reasons. But I'm thinking of otherwise, where you talk about VLE, if they put two lots together, it's an easy task.
And a lot of times what we might see there is a unit above a garage is pretty common.
Which is possible in the city, actually, too, unbeknownst to parties. But the impact fees, so is the accessory dwelling going to have an additional impact fee?
Correct, yes, because it is a separate rentable, livable unit year-round, we assess it at the multifamily rate, though, because we understand that it is smaller and generates fewer trips.
$4,000?
5, yeah. Just using entirely round numbers, your mid-tier, single-family home right now is around 10,000 per unit. The accessory is 5.
But you still have water and sewer impact fees? too,
Correct.
That would,
One additional ERU, probably, yeah.
okay. And it is possible that if somebody wanted to rent their home out and then rent the accessory dwelling out, is that accurate?
On a long-term basis, yes.
Yes, long-term, yeah.
Yes, again, we thought about that, but not to say it for the 17th time, but the self-policing component, when you're renting to a tenant, and then you're renting to a second tenant, you gotta keep those tenants happy, so,
They tell on each other.
well, exactly.
They do.
Hence the self-policing.
I'm very glad to see something like this, because I do have, as a Realtor, a tremendous amount of, requests for accessory dwellings. Mother-in-law suites, they prefer them not to be attached, but still be able to keep an eye on them, and the cost savings, and now from affordable housing, because, a little 2-1 in Oslo Park, I used to rent for $600 a month. It's $1,500 now.
Yeah, it's gotten outrageous, and this will help.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Anything else? Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, Beth, we'll defer back to you. Go for it. Call for a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the changes to the LDR as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
All right. One opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4 aye, one opposed. Very good. Commissioner matters. Any commissioner matters?
I attended the City of Vero Beach visioning session at the community center, and was sitting next to a person who owns land out in the county out west of 66 in an ag area, and it was very interesting because she proposed tiny house subdivision with a normal-sized lot, so you could have, and Phil was involved in this discussion a little bit, you could have agricultural, you could grow your own food. I guess she'd been to the grocery store. And so that's just something I wanted to bring up in case you all want to think about it. And another thing might be, do we have a running total of the approved additional housing units?
Of accessory?
No. When we approve a development that's got
Yes. We have,
250 or 500 units or whatever. I was just curious about that, and if, I know I get in trouble all the time for mentioning this, if there's any, are we ever going to reach a maximum population kind of thing. I know we can have new towns and we can have hundreds and, I mean, what do we got now, 160,000?
I think the best way to answer this, I think it would be appropriate to have a visioning discussion here that answers a lot of these questions in totality. Couple of quick takes. Yes, we keep running totals on everything. Our magic number is about 1,000 new homes that get built per year. So we get 1,000 new homes built a year, about 2,000 people coming in. Our occupancy is just a little bit over 2 per house. The number approved might be larger or smaller. Recently, it was smaller. The reason being, we had approved so many in 04, 5, 6, 7 as zombie subdivisions that had infrastructure in and nobody building them, that we've had absorption. So that was an era of a large amount of entitlements and a very small amount of construction subsequent. Last 3 years, we've had about 1,000 homes. In context, that's not that high. We've had a maximum of 3,000 homes in 04. So we're considerably below the total number of homes that were built during the last boom, although we're in a mini boom now. Some of the reason the boom isn't bigger is supply chain issues and so forth, and shortages of labor due to COVID and other things. That's some of the reason. Some of it is very low interest rates. We have those now. Those may go up and change things. So I think these are kind of in total issues that I would be more comfortable discussing with some research and in the context of visioning.
Do we, oh, shoot. I apologize.
Planning matters.
Yes, Ryan, do you have one?
Yeah, I do anticipate having the second meeting in June. Unfortunately, we did have a month off with May, but so that would be 2 Thursdays from now. I believe it's the 23rd. I'm hoping to have that meeting.
And I have another mark your calendar event, July 27th. We will be having our first ever planning officials training session. It's led by Gene Bowles. He is a legend in the field of land use law and planning and zoning regulation. He can answer all your questions on quasi-judicial processes, public hearings, things like this that it never hurts to kind of get refreshed on. We are doing this as part of our regional affiliation with the American Planning Association, our local chapter. Our chapter extends in the Treasure and Space Coasts, and every county has taken a turn, except us, to host regional planners training. We plan to have it up in Fellsmere. I think it'll be exciting. We're going to have lunch, and we're going to be joined by counterparts from the other counties too. What?
Breakfast and lunch.
Breakfast and lunch, sorry. Okay.
meals.
For those of you who are on the fence, I think I just swung you.
Is that available to municipal planners?
Yeah, why not?
Yes, but it's focused on elected officials and planning and zoning.
Appointed planning officials.
But yeah, for municipalities as well, but of course, probably some of the planners and other folks can attend as well.
And what day of the week is the 27th?
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Excellent.
And
That's excellent.
all morning or
assuming you're
all
hoping
day?
it's
Mor-
Well,
morning,
at least breakfast and lunch, so that should give you an
morning and
idea.
mid-afternoon. Morning to mid-afternoon.
Would it be crude to ask if the breakfast and lunch is free?
Absolutely. It's free.
Absolutely crude or absolutely free?
There is a registration fee,
Whoa,
Phil.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Back up the truck.
Hold the presses. So there's a $20 charge for attendee?
$20 registration.
Okay, and we don't have a scholarship or anything from here on that. Cover that cost? All right. Yeah, unfortunately, we do have a $20 charge per person, but it includes
Breakfast and lunch is
lunch.
not free.
No.
So, no, it's not free.
Yeah.
My
There
apologies.
is no free lunch.
Yes.
And what kind of venue do they have in Fellsmere that can take,
They have an old school room that
whole
has a
area.
beautiful auditorium in it.
oh,
In the it's the Boys and Girls Club, City Hall, so they have a theater in there. I think it'll be very comfortable, a nice and appropriate place for planning, as that's a city on the rise, and it's also an historic building, so I think it's a good way to, I wanted to pick a venue pretty close to the north end of the county for the guys driving down from Daytona Beach.
then,
It's called Indian River Hospitality.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Anything else for planning matters?
Nothing for me.
Attorney matters?
None, sir.
Thank you, sir. This meeting's adjourned.
You got